Hello everyone, 76 Patriot here, and today I want to briefly discuss the Senate race in Nevada that is happening later this year. Now, this is an interesting one, guys, because Republicans don't need it in order to retake the Senate. However, it would be a great seat to pick up. And additionally, I think it very well may be the closest, certainly one of the closest races this year. So without further ado, before we look at some of these results, let's first look at the candidates that are running. So Sam Brown is, of course, the Republican nominee in this race. He's endorsed by President Trump, and he was a veteran, I believe, with no prior political experience. But the interesting part is he is kind of the more establishmentarian candidate in the primary that he won. However, he's not like full on establishment like Mitt Romney or somebody terrible like that. So basically, at the end of the day, he's not the kind of candidate I would have wished for personally. However, Nevada's Republican Party doesn't have a super strong bench, in my opinion. So he's basically the best choice that you could have had or hoped to have in this race. So that's Sam Brown, and he will be running against Jackie Rosen, the incumbent. And Rosen is an interesting character because she is somebody that kind of plays this moderate card. And once in a while, there is some kind of a very rare instance in which he actually votes, relatively a bit more moderate than the hardcore left wingers. Regardless, at the end of the day, she's basically just another lock, stock, and barrel Democrat with really nothing special. I mean, she's not really talked about that much at all, and she's pretty milquetoast on the whole. So basically, Nevadans will be faced with the choice of, do they keep their kind of run-of-the-mill incumbent Democrat leadership in the Senate, or do they want kind of a fresh face and somebody with a new take on politics? And an interesting kind of way to gauge how this race is going so far is to look back at some of the historic polling in Nevada's Senate races. And Nevada's a state that, I'll just be honest, is a very much an outlier when it comes to polling. Republicans are, for whatever reason, strangely enough, overestimated very often in the state. And that's kind of unusual, honestly, across the country. So as we can see, back in 2018, when Rosen knocked out the incumbent, actually, Dean Heller, um, polls had it as a tied race, and she actually eked it out, or not eked it out, she won comfortably, rather, by 5 points. Same thing happened in 2022. Adam Laxalt was shown to be up by just over 3, and Cortez Masto, that was a squeaker. She eked that one out by less than a point. And this is an interesting one. There could be some debate. There was a snowstorm that happened that day, and it might have caused some Republicans to kind of be kept at home and not come out on election day. Regardless, this is a trend. And if we go to current polling on this specific Senate race, we'll see that Rosen is up by almost 6, which is absolutely insane in my opinion, because that's not factoring in any theoretical overestimation of Republicans. So she could theoretically be up by like 7 or more. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that would be pretty ludicrous in a state that Trump is probably going to win, honestly, as of right now. I just don't think there's going to be that much ticket splitting. Because if we go to presidential polling in the state, Trump is in this 5-way kind of scenario. He's up by just over 5. And again, that may not hold. He may take the state by a point or less than a point. But regardless, I don't think there's that much ticket splitting going on there. I think that there may be a little bit, and Rosen may be able to sneak by like half a point. But at the end of the day, I think the Senate race is going to be a very close race. And part of this is just due to the fundamentals of Nevada itself. If we look at the Cook PVI that shows kind of the partisan lean of the state, it is a very divided state, albeit with a small Republican partisan lean. So we can see it has a PVI of R+1. And out of any of the swing states, and this is interesting, and I think it shows good signs for Republicans both now and in the future. Out of any of the swing states in 2020 on the presidential level, Nevada was the only one, I believe, that actually kind of voted to the right of the nation, even as the nation moved left. And it did the same thing in 2022. Out of all the Senate races, Nevada's was the closest. Laxalt lost by about 8,000 votes. So I think that that bodes well, not only for this race, but also for Republicans in the future, because Rosen isn't somebody that's like an electoral juggernaut, and she's not some like super popular household name in the state like Bob Casey in Pennsylvania or something like that. So I think that this does bode well, particularly being in a presidential year, all the more with Trump going to have probably pretty strong down ballot coattail effects. And we can kind of see this kind of divided nature in the state if we look at Democrats have been on a winning streak for the past decade on the presidential level, but if you look at the Senate level, there was actually some Republican Senate victories between 2000 and 2016. This other seat's been held by Democrats for a long time, but nonetheless, um, you know, it's not completely a downer for Republicans. It's definitely a very possible win, particularly if trends keep going in President Trump's favor. As far as how other kind of pundits have ordered or kind of ranked this race, Cook Political Report, pretty liberal outlet, even though they kind of pretend to be nonpartisan, they have it as a pure toss-up. And that, they even I defer with them on some things here and there as far as ratings, but they even put it as a pure toss-up. So it really is. If we go to another one, Sabato's Crystal Ball, pretty unabashedly liberal. They have Nevada as leaning Democrat, which personally I think is frankly ridiculous. But regardless, nonetheless, if we go back to some of these historic results, back to these maps here, we can see that, actually let's go to the Senate results and then back to the presidential results, and then we'll wrap up. But basically, we can see that in 2016, so that's Cortez Masto, obviously different candidate, different seat, but she only won by 2 when Trump was on the ballot. And so that's a good sign, I think. There's not a ton of ticket splitting, because if we look back at 2016, Clinton won by 2.4. So no ticket splitting in that race at all. There was no Nevada Senate race, of course, in 2020. But basically, if we actually go to 2020, you'll see Trump lost it by the same exact margin in 2016 as he did in 2020, even when the nation voted to the left overall. And now if we fast forward to 2018, sorry, I'm kind of jumping around here, guys, but in 2018, Rosen won by 5, but it was a very blue midterm Democratic favorable year, and Heller was not a strong incumbent by any means. And so, if Trump was on the ballot, she probably wouldn't have won. Obviously, he wasn't, but regardless, in 2022, of course, was one of the closest Senate race in quite a while, and Masto only won by 8,000 votes. We'll have to see, because I honestly predict Trump, my last prediction, going to win the state very narrowly, might be by a point or less. I just don't see how there's that much of a split, and Rosen's winning by like 5 or 6. So I think they're going to run very close, Trump and Sam Brown. I think Sam Brown might have a pinch less of support. I'm just going to be honest. I think he may, there may be a gap of like 2 to 3 points, but I think it's something that can be made up by Election Day if enough people get out and kind of know the importance of picking up a Senate seat. And so that's something that I think we'll see improvement with, particularly as Hispanics move to the right. And basically, as a Republican, the one other thing that I will show before we totally finish this video is, of course, I'm looking at presidential results, but I'm just trying to get a good map of the state here. So basically, as a Republican, you need to lose, you're going to basically guaranteed to lose at least Washoe and Clark, but you need to lose them by respectable margins. You can't get creamed, or you lose the state. So Washoe, you can kind of lose that by about 4, but if you do that, you need to kind of trim your margins of loss down and Clark down and lose the state by, say, 7 or maybe 6.5. that's basically all it takes. And of course, max the Royals out as red as possible. And that's basically all it takes. It's some math for a Republican to win the state and flip the state of Nevada. That's what Joe Lombardo did in his gubernatorial race back in 2022. He pulled off a narrow win. And that's basically what Sam Brown needs to do in order to win this November. So as of right now, I don't really have a prediction. I mean, I would say as of this very second, perhaps it's a tilt blue just because, Rosen's an incumbent and we have yet to see how strong Sam Brown is and if this polling kind of goes his way. But nonetheless, it is really, in my opinion, possibly, maybe other than Ohio, the closest. Actually, I think Ohio, Marino's going to win by a larger margin, but it's quite possibly the closest Senate race this year. So that's basically it for this one, guys. I'll be definitely looking a lot into this one as we get kind of closer to Election Day. But that's it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.